What's going on, everyone? We're back. We're here. We're in the spot. We're in the animal room. And if you can't tell, I'm pretty excited about it because I haven't been spending much time in here as of late. So it was pretty good to go through and enjoy all of my animals because I've really just been taking care of them and to see my terrariums again. And today, we're going to be taking the 3-month look at the totally free terrarium. So here we have it, the totally free terrarium. Now for those of you who are not familiar with the video where I actually set this up, I'll leave a link right up here, but essentially what I did was build this terrarium free of charge. Now a lot of people will say that's subjective, and I said that in the video, and a lot of people even challenged me in the comments saying, oh well, nothing's technically free. If you want to get really technical about it, no it's not, but I didn't spend a cent up front to make this. So really, if you want to make a terrarium, guarantee you have all the supplies laying around to make something like this, so if you want to learn how to do it, check out the video up there. I suppose the only real exception is if you don't live somewhere that has mosses or plants that are suitable for a closed terrarium, in which case your best bet is to just make like an open cactus terrarium or something of that nature, or of course spend the money and get the supplies necessary to make a closed terrarium. Anyways, that's enough on that. I just wanted to reiterate that I made this terrarium completely free, and you can do the same at home. And as you can see, we not only have a terrarium that looks really good, but it's still thriving 3 months later, and it looks even better than it did whenever we first set it up. I think it's important to recognize how well this terrarium is actually doing, and the reason that I say that is of course because we built it for free. And in doing so, we had to cut some corners, and we did things sort of unorthodox, if you want to put it that way, because I have a set way that I like to make terrariums, and really how I like to teach you how to make terrariums so that you can have the best shot at success with the terrarium. But in this case, for example, we didn't add the charcoal into the false bottom because of course that would incur an expense. Now of course there's some ways that you could probably pull it off for free, but in this case I didn't want to get into any of that, so we didn't add it. Now you may be saying, it's just a charcoal layer, it's not that important, right? Well, in actuality, the charcoal layer is very important in terrariums because it acts as a purification element. In the instance that I want to teach you guys how to make a terrarium and be very close to 100% successful in all cases, really the charcoal layer is one of my highest recommendations. Now, of course, we did the false bottom the way that I typically would also recommend doing, but the actual drainage barrier is just a plastic bag with holes poked in it. Now, if you don't have money, you can't get yourself the carbon fiberglass window screen mesh that I would typically use, that's a great alternative because I'm sure you have some plastic bags laying around your house, and as you can see, the terrarium's doing very well. The main reason that I say any of that is to show you that although there are certain principles that you want to stick to whenever making a terrarium, if you deviate from those slightly because you don't have the certain materials, or you want to try to substitute out a specific material for something else, or you want to sort of MacGyver things like we did with the false bottom, you definitely can, and deviation is not a bad thing at all because this isn't a rule book. It's not something that is set in stone that you have to do it this way. You can definitely experiment and have great results, and you don't always have to do things a certain way. So that's why, I don't know if you've noticed, I always show you guys how to make a terrarium slightly different in each demonstration, although the principles are sort of the same. To conclude on all of that, we'll give a quick rundown on the terrarium itself for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, but essentially what we have here is a layer of gravel. This is our false bottom's drainage element. It's going to act as a water reservoir that keeps the water separate from the rest of the terrarium. I'll leave a video up here all about that portion of a terrarium. Then moving up, we have a piece of a Ziploc bag cut out with holes poked all throughout it. That's going to act as our drainage barrier, and that also ties into the false bottom layer. Moving up, we have a layer of substrate, and that's composed of soil from outside along with pieces of bark and other elements to sort of help create a pseudo ABG mix. And my typical terrarium substrate is my take on an ABG mix, so that's sort of what I wanted to replicate here. Then moving up, we have the plants and hardscape elements, other things like that. So it's mosses, sticks, twigs, what have you. Then up here we have a custom made lid. It's just another piece of a Ziploc bag cut to size to cover the lid. rubber banded in place, and then we have a piece of burlap tied over top of it to make a nice aesthetic. And then of course it's all contained inside of an old Prego tomato sauce jar. So why don't we go ahead and take a closer look at the progress of this terrarium. As I said several times throughout the video, and as you could clearly see, this terrarium is thriving and doing quite well. Overall, there's definitely a lot of new growth on all of the plants, which is always good to see, and really to be expected with moss in a terrarium like this. It's going to do its thing and it's going to grow well. Over in this section we have mostly liverwort, but there's also some thread moss and some star moss growing in here, and I really like the way that this is looking. I like how the liverwort actually has those sort of fingers or almost a trident look to it. I don't really think it's growing quite like that in my other terrarium, so it's pretty cool. I also like how down on the false bottom here it's pretty much taken over by liverwort. I think there's also bits of sphagnum moss down in there as well, but it looks pretty cool, and I'm curious to see how that ends up turning out long term. Moving over this way, we have some more liverwort and then a single strand of sphagnum moss just growing up the glass. And I thought it was kind of odd just because all of that is on the back side of the terrarium, and that's the only spot where it's growing elsewhere in the terrarium. So it's pretty cool because a terrarium, and I view them as an art form, you guys know that by now, but you set them up and you make them look a particular way, but after that they do their own thing. Nature takes its course and they grow and they do whatever they want to do unless you intervene, which of course I do advocate doing maintenance on them, not only for aesthetic reasons but also for functional reasons. But anyways, I just thought that was pretty cool, and of course I like this part here. It just looks really cool with the acorn caps, and I think that as the moss has grown in, that's really that feature has really become more apparent and just looks all the more better. Moving over this way, we have some star moss here, which looks pretty cool. And then let me backtrack slightly with the acorn caps again. They have various mosses growing in them and around them, and it just creates a really cool look. And acorn caps are a great and easy hardscape element because they have variation in them. They're like that little cup. So if you can get your hands on some, I think they make a great element to add to any terrarium, really. As we spin around to the back side of the terrarium, you'll notice that there's just a huge dense wall of sphagnum moss here, and it's pretty cool, and I like it because whenever you look at the terrarium from this side, it gives a cool sense of depth, but it's also like you're not just looking straight through the container. It makes it look more natural, if you will. So that was sort of my goal with this, and I think that the sphagnum moss definitely played a huge role in that. So it works really well as a background plant, even though it is a moss, because it grows nice and tall. Obviously I like this terrarium when I first set it up, but with all of them it's like wine. As they age, they just look and get better and better in most cases, unless you have an unsuccessful terrarium. But usually by this point, the 3-month mark, you're going to know if it's going to be successful or not. And look at this thing. It is doing really well. Everything is extremely green and growing quite nicely. Now you may be wondering, are you going to do maintenance on this thing today? And actually I'm not. I think it looks really good as it is, minus this piece of sphagnum moss. Even though I do like it and I think it's a cool element, it just doesn't fit in there and it takes away from the rest of the aesthetic, if you will. But maybe at the 6-month mark or 1-year mark or whatever, we'll remove that and put it in the back side of the terrarium. But for now, I think it can stay. There's nothing else really in here that I want to address, so I'm just going to leave that go. And as I've said several times throughout the video, and I keep making a point about it, is that I made this terrarium for free. And the reason that I keep hitting home with that is because I don't want you to be detracted from making a terrarium or think that you can't do it because you don't have any money, or that you don't want to spend any money. Now, even some of those builds that you see me do, they're really not that expensive to do if you actually want to spend money to make something and buy the plants, all that stuff. But anyways, this thing, made it for free. Any of you guys can do it. If you just follow the principles, follow the guide that I made for this, you can definitely do it, and I guarantee that it's going to bring you some joy. You might not have success the first time, but as you work through it and you get better and better, in time, you'll be able to make something every time that's going to be successful. So that's going to do it for today's terrarium update. I did it a little bit differently, and I do it slightly different for every terrarium update, but let me know what you thought about this one down in the video description. Would you like watching some more videos like this again? If you did, I can definitely make more like this, and of course we're going to continue doing the terrarium updates. And also, stick with me guys, I got some more tutorials coming. As you know, I'm moving right now, and I really haven't done much of any moving yet. I'm still fixing up the other place, but it's getting really close to the point to where I can finally start to take my animals over there. They'll be living over there before I am, but that's beside the point. We'll talk about that at a different time. But I gotta get going. I'm getting really tired here because I was over there all day today. But we got more terrarium stuff coming up, more vivarium stuff. If you're not subscribed, you like plants and anything really like what you just saw, hit subscribe. Go check out the other videos on my channel. I'm sure you'll find some more stuff that you're gonna like. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.